Hi, today we are going to configure a small network where we'll have a virtual firewall and we'll configure Windows 10 client to access the internet using that setup. Now for that we are going to use pfSense, and you know that pfSense is a firewall or a router for a computer software which is based on FreeBSD. So we have the vCenter setup ready. If you don't have it, you can install and configure pfSense and Windows 10 as a virtual machine on VirtualBox, or if you're using VMware Workstation. So then I'll show you what we are going to cover today. This is a simple network that we'll be configuring today. We'll configure our own firewall that would separate, for example, a student on a local area network from the other students in the same class. We'll configure a single Windows 10 workstation to communicate with the internet. So as you can see, this is our vCenter setup, and I have a pre-configured firewall, which is pfSense over here, and I have a workstation which is Windows 10. Now before we'll start, I'll have to make certain changes to my firewall. If I'll go to edit settings of my firewall, you can see that there is only one adapter which is facing WAN. Now since we need to route the traffic, I'll have to have another interface which is facing our LAN as well. Now in order to add that, I'll add another device from here, and then I'll select a network adapter, and then I'll have to configure it so that it's facing the LAN. So I'll browse and I'll select the interface which is facing my LAN. For me, this is the one, so I'll select it. Now once that's done, one more thing that you'll keep a note of it, that you can note down the MAC addresses of these adapters which are over here. Now it would help you to match if it is properly configured or not, so keep an eye on that and press OK. Now once your firewall would start, it won't give you an option to change the MAC addresses or note down all those things. So since we have just added one of the adapters, it does not have a MAC address. Once we'll start it, it would have it over there. So we can launch the remote console for that. Now as you can see, it's loading. In the meantime, we can load our Windows 10 machine as well. Now you can see that our pfSense is loaded over here. Now we can select different options in this one. For example, if you'll misconfigure anything and you need to reset it back to its original settings, you can always select number 4 to reset to factory defaults. But at the moment, the first thing we would like to do is that we need to assign the interfaces. So in order to do that, I'll press 1 and I'll press enter. It would show me the MAC addresses for both interfaces, and the most important thing over here is that you must check that both interfaces should be up. Now if we want to set up the VLANs for it at the moment, I'll press no. I don't want to set up the VLANs, but I would like to name the WAN interface as EM0, and it would ask for the other one for the LAN, and I'll choose EM1 in this case so that we can easily distinguish it. So as you can see that it has renamed WAN as EM0 and LAN as EM1. Would you like to proceed? Just press yes and it would save the configuration. Now as you can see, it has renamed WAN as EM0 and LAN as EM1. Now the next step is that we need to define the IP addresses for these interfaces. So in order to assign the IP addresses, we can select number 2 from here, and then we'll press enter. Now it would ask you that enter that which interface you would like to configure at the moment. So since we are first configuring WAN, I'll press 1 and I'll press enter. Now it's asking that would you like to have a DHCP configured on this one. Since we are defining a static IP address, I'll press no and I'll press enter. Now it's asking again that enter the WAN IP address. So you can select any IP address that you have on the network which is not assigned to the gateway. So you can select, I'm selecting for example .100 over here. Next thing is it's asking that what should be the subnet for this one. In this case I'm gonna select 24, And now it's asking the upstream proxy, which should be the gateway of it. So since we have selected the gateway is 10.0.17.2, I'll select it over here and I'll press enter. Now it's asking that would you like to configure IPv6? I'll press no and press enter. And further it would ask that the enter of the IP address for IPv6. I'm not going to select it, so I'll just press enter. And here also we'll be using HTTPS, so I don't want to revert to HTTP. I'll press no and press enter. So now it would save the configuration, and then it would ask us to configure it for the LAN interface as well. So as you can see, it has defined the IP address for the WAN, which we can see as 10.0.17.100, but it has not configured the interface for, or the IP address for the LAN interface. Now just to show you on my Windows machine, on Windows 10, what's the difference if we have not configured the network properly. If I'll try to go to, for example, google.com and press enter, it won't open anything since nothing is configured on this one. It's not able to access the internet. Now in order for it to start working, we'll have to configure the LAN interface, and then we'll have to configure the firewall before we can access internet. So let's switch back to our firewall and let's try to configure the LAN interface. So just like we did earlier, I'm going to select 2 over here, and then I'm going to select the interface, which is our LAN. So I'll select 2 in this case and I'll press enter. Now it's asking the new LAN address for IPv4. So I'm going to enter as 10.0.5.2. and then I'll press enter. Now it's asking for the subnet. I'll press 24 and I'll press enter. Now rest of the things are normal. We are not going to have any upstream for the LAN. We don't want to configure IPv6 address, and we don't want to have a DHCP on this one, so I'll press no, and again no, since we'll be using HTTPS, so we have pressed N. Now it has configured the LAN interface as well, and if I'll see, you can check that LAN and WAN both have an IP address over here. Now let's go to our Windows machine and let's try to refresh this thing over here, but you can still see that we cannot access the internet on this computer. Now let's try to refresh it again if we can access internet, but it's not going to work since, remember in the starting we talked about that we need to configure it so that a specific user on our network can pass through our firewall and can access the internet only. So in that case, what we'll have to do is that we'll go to the network and sharing center, and I'll click on the network, and then I'll click on TCP/IP version 4, go to the properties of it, and here we can define the IP address. So I'll define it as 10.0.5. For example, if this is a user 100, we'll have to keep the same number over here. As you remember that we want this user to access the internet on our LAN, so we'll go to the setup again, and we'll type the IP address, the subnet mask of it as 255.255.0, and our default gateway should be 10.0.5.2. And if you remember that that's what we have configured on our firewall on our LAN, we have 10.0.5.2. So I'll select the same thing as the DNS server and I'll enter 10.0.5.2 over here, and then I'll press OK. Now once that's done, we'll have to configure the firewall. That's the last step on our settings over here. So since we have entered the static IP address, now if I would try to access my pfSense over here, it should give me this thing that now it can reach the graphical user interface of the pfSense. Now I'll press OK, and I'll provide the default password over there, username and password, and I'll press enter. Now it would start a wizard over here, like we'll have to configure a couple of things on that before it would start working. So I'll provide, let's go through the wizard. I'll just name it as the name of my computer, whatever the name of your computer is. So I'll just type it over here. I renamed my computer as fw1-sayed. I'm going to enter it over here, and then same thing for the domain. Let's write it, for example, my first name and the local in front of it. We'll keep the setting override DNS as it is. Press next, and then we'll not make any changes over here. Press next. It's the static IP address, we know that, and you can see the other settings for the IP address of that was defined for me specifically, and the gateway upstream for that. And then I'll have to uncheck this thing for block private network for entering WAN. Then I'll press next, and here this information is fine. I'll just scroll next and enter the password over here and press next to finish it. Now I would reload the settings so that it would be able to save all the configurations. Now once that's done, you can press finish over here. Now once it's done, it would show you this page with some information. Click accept and click close. Now just in case if you'll make some mistakes in the configurations, you can go to general setup over here again, and you can make the necessary changes in case if you want to make any changes in this one. Further, go through the top menu over here. It's even helping you in configuring the WAN and LAN again over here. And if you can see the sign, the exclamation mark disappeared from here, it means that the internet should be working fine on it now. And if for example you want to change the upstream proxy and rest of the things, so it should be fine. And if we would now try to open google.com, it should open it. And if we would like to open the website of the college, it should open that here as well as Champlain College. So that was a short tutorial on how to learn virtual firewalls and a virtual machine so that we can have an internet access for a specific user on our network where we configured our firewall to be used in a mixed environment. So that is for today. Thank you very much.